think the time has come where sustainability isn't just a nice to have, or isn't just a thing that is sort of an add-on to the business. I think now it's almost saying like the ability to sustain ourselves, the ability to sustain your business in a world where we have collapsing ecosystems.
How do you define system change and why is it important?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we have two ways of looking at systems change. One, a lot of people talk about systems change as an outcome. So we try to change the system. So, people say climate system change, not climate change. The idea that, the outcome is the system needs to change, be it the education system, the health system, the food system. And so there's an outcome. And what that really means is that we need to change the structure and the patterns of how we deliver and organise in that system. So that's the first kind of definition. But also systems change is about a process, the process of creating change systemically. So how do we create change from a systemic viewpoint? And so we're also looking at it as the continual emergence, working at multiple levels of creating change. So there's sort of these two different levels of both the change we want to see in the world, as well as the process of creating change.
You are passionate about building a global learning community. Why is this important?
So I think if we zoom out to the bigger picture, we're living in a very complex world. A lot of our systems challenges, be it addressing climate change, looking at structural inequality, they're really complex issues. There aren't actually one solution or one idea that will solve it. And so we think that we're also living in a very changing world. We've seen that with COVID, a world that is continually changing and moving. And critical to that is both our ability to learn and adapt, our ability to work with those challenges, and also our collective capability. So our capability to think about change in a different way and apply different tools and approaches, from strategy to collaboration to addressing these complex issues. So in order to do that, we think we need a kind of a learning infrastructure, a way of learning, a way of thinking about the world, a way of enacting change in the world that really supports us to address those challenges.
How can businesses incorporate innovation and prioritise experimentation in the workplace?
So I think the key thing for business that they need to start thinking about is that if you take on board that the external world is changing, right, and that the products or services or the business that they have today isn't going to necessarily address the challenges that we're going to face tomorrow, innovation and experimentation becomes a critical need. So the first thing that's needed from any business is almost the case, that not necessarily just the business case, but also the values case, the case of saying we won't have a business in the future unless we innovate and we experiment. So they're sort of at that level of the need for experimentation is critical to any success of a business, especially in the world that we're currently living in. And then I think there's something about how do we take on an attitude of strategy that recognises that we can't necessarily have 5-year plans anymore. We need to adapt and respond to changing markets and the way we look at it. And obviously the digital sector is very good at doing this. But I think there's something about marrying that long-term vision and that long-term intention with both short-term innovations and adaptability and working with context. So that's kind of more the external need for innovation. And then I think, there's a lot of internal processes of how you actually could set that up. How do you really create your own skunk works or your own labs to kind of give the legitimacy to people in your business and working externally with people to really find those different services and solutions to the big challenges out there that the business is kind of a part of.
What message do you have for businesses that may be reluctant to make sustainable changes?
I think if people have reluctance or resistance, it kind of speaks to, are they wanting to be in operation in the future? So I think the time has come where sustainability isn't just a nice to have, or isn't just a thing that is sort of an add-on to the business. I think now it's almost saying like the ability to sustain ourselves, the ability to sustain your business in a world where we have collapsing ecosystems, we have economic challenges looming in the future. We're looking at value chain challenges, looking at where we get our supplies of our products from, or even resources. These are all being impacted by big global trends, big environmental changes that we're seeing, as well as some of the social issues. So this isn't anymore about a little bit of CSR on the side, a little bit of ESG that we're doing. It's fundamental about how does this business operate in this world. And so, you know, this is not about a separate strategy. It's about really integrating it into how business thinks and operates.
What is the biggest change businesses can make to become more sustainable?
I think that in itself is a false question, if I'm honest. I'm being a bit cheeky here, because I think one big change isn't going to do it, because the whole point of taking a systems approach to what you're doing is the multiple leverages, the multiple areas where you need to take action. You have to be working on it on multiple fronts. So, I mean, the biggest change is to really start orientating your intention and your strategy towards understanding your role as a business within the bigger system. So that's a mindset shift. That's a shift on saying we have to contribute to a future that isn't just sustainable, but also is just and is regenerative. And what I mean by that is really works on, you know, on looking at the social inequity issues and really starts addressing these root causes of why our biosphere and our, you know, our resources are collapsing at the moment. So really looking at how do we not just not take out as much, but how do we really regenerate our ecological and our social systems so we have a thriving future. So I think there's something about what's the one big thing you can do. It's almost setting that as your North Star, your goal. And then there are multiple interventions that need to happen behind that on multiple fronts. And I think setting up, you know, real mission orientated areas of work within your organization and business, saying, right, we now need to really have a concerted effort on climate, and we have a really concerted effort on our social issues, and really trying to galvanize behind some really key areas is really important.